Welcome to our Tech for Business podcast. Today, Todd, our COO and CISO, and Kelsey, our graphic designer and brand strategist, are here to talk about using AI in marketing and operations. They'll cover finding the right mix between automated efficiency and crucial human oversight and give a sneak peek into what's next for AI technology. Let's dive in.
Clearly, that benchmark of 75% of employees actively using AI, I'm going, yep, it's me. Hi, I'm the problem. It's me.
It's remarkable to me to that number is staggering. I use it every day. I was having a nice conversation with Kyle, our CEO, about what does it look like to use CEO, and we get into to use AI, and we were talking about the ROI on it, right? And you're trying to justify it, so for number's sake, you're looking at Copilot's like $30 a month, and it's the initial reaction is, well, it's not that much. But if you have 100, 150 people, that starts to add up pretty quickly. And you start to get into the conversation, okay, well, what are the benefits of it? Can I prove an ROI on it? And I said, I use it every day, but it's not like I get additional hours in the day. Some of the tasks I'm doing are much more efficient now. But it's hard to then say, well, I was XYZ dollars more efficient. It allowed me to do stuff. Again, being in the role that I am, it's very operational. It's a lot of problem solving. It's hard to justify that cost and say X dollars happened because I was more efficient doing this other thing. It's there. It's just such a soft cost. It's hard to put a dollar figure on it.
Right. What we were discussing right before I hit the record button, we were like, okay, so Copilot, you're talking about, right, that has a set license fee. If it's ChatGPT on my iPad or my phone on the side, or Gemini in a browser, because I have 4 different Gmail accounts, that's an overshare, but I'm like, yeah, they're easy to create and you can use them for whatever you want. Right, that I can just log in and go, okay, hey, I'm not putting in company data. I'm not putting in anything that compliance-wise would maybe be a bad idea. I'm just going, hey, here's this word that I'm trying to get out. Give it back to me. Write this better, write it friendly, make it more clear because that was gibberish. Essentially, everything I wish that we could do in this podcast live is going, take everything that came in my mouth, make it make more sense right now. But that's free. That's something that, right, that's the search GPT that OpenAI is coming out with. That's why Google is, right, there's all this marketing essentially. Nobody's going to know any of the content on your website unless Google scans it and puts into Gemini, but then they're not visiting your website. You're not getting that data point to tie it all back to go, oh, hey, look, we were able to create X more amount of blog posts and our SEO score increased by this amount. Okay, great, but then you're not tracking, did AI learn from it? And I just got an email this morning that they were like, AI models that train on AI content put out gibberish. And you're going, okay, logistically, that makes sense. So if marketers are using AI at a heavy rate, and we can post something in the comments of all of the different articles that I was reading through this morning going, what is it? How many people are using it? But if they're saying, okay, 90% of marketers are saying AI skills will be critical in hiring decisions. So I'm going, yep, you have to be able to use AI. I'm hiring for content, I'm making blog posts, I'm making white papers. And even if I'm training that model on great content, as in you talking in a podcast, I'm using that transcript, it's learning from that. If then I go, hey, now take this blog post and make an email off of it, and then from the email, make a social media post. At what point down that drip does that become gibberish? Because yes, then I'm being more productive. I'm putting out better ROI. But is the content even worth it? Because you can move at a speed. I've totally done it that I've been like, yep, everything looks great. And then I look back and I'm like, how many times does my copy say, as CIT, comma? And it's the beginning of every single paragraph. And I'm going, yeah. That content looks great.
Well, again, visually it probably does, but you make a great point, and we keep talking about it over and over again that AI is fantastic, but it still needs the human element on the back end of it. At least currently, for reference, we were talking about starting before the recording, as I was talking about where the AI is going. Currently, it's kind of dumb, and I don't mean to be derogatory. It just isn't terribly robust in what it's doing. It can do tasks very specific, but they have to be really darn specific. Create this as a blog, summarize this, tell it to me like a 5-year-old. You can do those types of things with it, but if I did all of that at once, I would probably struggle with it. That being said, Kelsey mentioned OpenAI, Google, et cetera. The big giants are actually getting together and they're getting to the next level of AI, and they claim that this will be out in the next 3 to 4 months, which is insane to me. But the next version they're referencing is called Devon. And Devon, they say you can give it a task and it can be very generic. So hypothetically, you could do what you just said is take the content from this webinar, podcast, whatever, and I want you to create a blog post and I want you to create the social media aspect of it as well. And oh, by the way, please make a nice clean email as well. And it should be able to do all of that in one shot instead of having to do it individually tasks. But I haven't played with it. I am very curious to see what that looks like, to be able to get into a tool set that says, I think I want something like this. Please create. Please.
Yeah. Go and do it. And that's it. I was thinking through and I was like, yeah, that's essentially, so obviously we're not sponsored by anybody on this podcast, but internally we do use a tool called copy.ai in the marketing side of the house. They have workflows which do kind of what you said. And then there's APIs, things that you can essentially connect to your other tools. So feasibly, I was talking to somebody in our app dev department and I was like, okay, we use this tool and this is what I'd love to see in the future. I'd love to see when a podcast gets published, the transcript gets downloaded down, it goes over here, it does essentially a 7-step, because as we all know with AI, you could give it all of these instructions, which is what I naturally want to do, is to be like, go here, go here, go here, but you have to step by step it and go, learn from this. Okay, now analyze, take out all of the names. Okay, now that you've taken out all the names, now I want you to look at it from the lens of a marketer. Okay, now that you've done that, I want you to make an outline. Now that you have the outline, I want you to fill in the content using the transcript. Okay, now that you have the transcript, I want you to come up with 3 subject lines. You have to do it all on these separate step-by-steps, even though, to your point, doing it as a human is just going, okay, I need to read a transcript and then write an email. We do all of those steps, but that was my favorite analogy that I read this morning, was like, that's deep learning, is it's meant to be modeled after the neurological synapses of the human brain, to go, I went to all of these different data sources, all of these different things, and connected them all to give you this. To your point, still not perfect, but now somebody's going, okay, I'm going to do all that in the back end. And I'm just not going to show you that that's happening. All that you know is I publish a podcast. I sit down, I talk with you, I publish it. Whoop-de-doo. Then the computer does all of this stuff and goes, here's a transcript, here's all of these things. And then I mentioned it to you earlier as I'm going, that's what I want Copilot to do. I'm not at all knocking Copilot as a tool. I just got used to that next level of going, here's all these things. And then I want it to send a task to our task board. I want it to notify the person assigned to the task. I want it to automatically get a draft started in a document that can be editable, all of those things. But each of those steps is also something that could break. So I'm going, okay, feasibly, as a marketer, that sounds like I'm going, look how much time I could save. Here's a blog post with all of Todd's nuggets of wisdom. It's great. It's good to go. I don't have to sit down. You don't have to write it. I don't have to write it. I just have to edit it. Cool. If that breaks at any point, or whoever is the person that set up that workflow, if that stops working, you're going, okay, it takes me 2 days to set it up. Cool. Get 100 blog posts done. I get 100 podcasts done. I didn't realize that one step is broken. And now I've put out a bunch of gibberish or straight up lies, hallucinations on our website. And I'm going, okay, brand reputation wise, that's not great. And so, if we were kind of bringing it back to the idea that we originally had for this podcast, which was, I'm a marketer, I use all of these tools, I have to go to you and go, can I buy this tool? Or, hey, instead of hiring somebody to do everything that I just outlined, can we set all of this up? Can we do all of this? But then I feel like I'm sitting at the edge of this very scary cliff that goes, okay, if I'm the one that sets up all of this, because I know all of this content and I've learned this tool and I've done this thing, and then this tool breaks or does something else, what's the risk? Is the increase in productivity and content worth it? That's a lot of tangents to all of a sudden be like, for anybody listening, I apologize for the tangents. And I was like, really exciting thing. Also, horribly scary thing that could potentially happen. But then if I was going to you and going, hey, I want to do this, is that something that you'd even approve right now? Or is that something that you go, yeah, I feel like we should wait 3 to 6 months to see what sort of dumpster fire that's going to turn into and wait for it? Or are you going, yeah, that makes perfect sense. Let's not hire somebody. I want you to devote the next 2 weeks to just building workflows that can replace essentially an intern.
Sure. Well, tough question. And the answer naturally has to be, it depends. Naturally.
Naturally.
I think the way that you approach it does make a difference. So you're coming in and saying, quite frankly, what you just proposed to me as a great ROI, right? So if you're coming to a C-level and you're saying, I want to do X, Y, and Z, and the reason why I want to do it is because it makes me terribly efficient, and it does this, and I build this avatar, if you will, to help generate the content that we're looking for. And oh, by the way, I don't have to hire somebody. We are able to do this. What do you think? My answer is, I think that sounds awesome. However, there are a lot of other things that go into it too. So you covered a ton of content that makes a lot of sense to me, saying there is a lot of risk that goes into this. There's natural things that are in the world of AI from a security perspective, privacy, that we've covered in a ton of other podcasts up to this point. But you've touched on them. What does it look like from your privacy aspect? What do you know for your content? Is it good? Is it hallucinating? In case anybody doesn't know, basically what happens with the hallucination of AI is when it doesn't know the answer, the tool is designed to create one. And so if it doesn't know it, it's going to do its best to give you an answer anyway. That's what it's designed to do. And sometimes it just makes it up. So it isn't that it's hallucinating. It just makes up the content to complete the task it was given. There are some that actually come back and say, I can't complete that task, but more often than not, they will attempt to make it happen anyway. But going through that concept of, this is what I want to do, is what does your process look like? What's your QA look like? So I know that somebody actually is testing it, et cetera. And then the last piece that makes me say it depends is, if anybody's missed it, the EU has just released their first major AI law, and it's super early to see what this means. The way it's kind of context for it is, this will affect the big giants, the Googles, the Microsofts, the Meta, et cetera. But it potentially goes down to any company, hypothetically. And so as companies are trying to navigate that, instead of assuming they're going to take a huge risk, they're starting to be incredibly cautious on what they're doing. So if you have your organization is starting to get working in the EU, you have to take those types of things into consideration as well. Now, I responded with a really long diatribe as well, but I would say, yes, you're on the absolute right track. That would be something that would be very interesting to me for a variety of reasons. It simplifies my day. It simplifies yours, as long as there's a check and balance in there and I can get a return on the investment that I'm going after. I would be very much interested in that.
Yeah, which is kind of where my brain goes, is going, okay, right, marketers going, hey, some study, we'll link it. 16% of marketers said AI could probably do my job, which, right, is always that's the common social media storm, right? Everybody's going, well, AI can't replace, because as you just said, it can hallucinate. I was on a Marketo user group meeting once with a marketing operations gentleman from Verizon, and he may have not been the first person to say it, but he was the first one that I heard it, which is, AI is a very motivated intern. It only knows what you give it, but it'll do whatever you ask. So what you just outlined for hallucinating, right? That's what I'm going. Yeah, I can be really excited and go, tell me all about EDR. But if I don't give it some of the context, if it was trained on a model from 2020 and that's the context that it has, some of those you can look through, and as a marketer, it's not my day-to-day job to go, is that actually what an EDR tool is doing? I have no idea. And again, then if I'm Googling it and Gemini is popping up and I'm going, yeah, that's what it says, I'm like, half of that I don't know until I sit down on a podcast with you or Nate and you guys go, yeah, that's a lie. And I go, oh, okay.
That's incorrect. We would say it's incorrect.
I'm like, I don't know what movie it is. You sit on a throne of lies. Oh, it was Elf. So sorry. I'm like, that's where I got that from. That's what plays in my head, is essentially his character going, you sit on a throne of lies. And I'm like, yep, that's what happens when I read through that transcript and go, I feel like I was lied to. It's Mushu from Milan. You lied to me. If you guys couldn't tell, I watch way too many movies, and that's just how my brain looks at the world now. This is fine.
Agreed. Same here.
Yeah.
Cheers.
But bringing it back to, okay, going, could AI replace my job? I'm going, how much of my job as a marketer now is looking at AI tools and going, there's got to be a better way, which I feel like naturally I've always liked to do, is going, okay, data enrichment. There's got to be a better way than me Googling the size of every single company in our database and then manually putting it in. Was there more basic, right, AI processes? It's something, I believe it was an SEM Rush post that outlines it, that goes, there's AI, there's machine learning, and then there's deep learning. And deep learning is where I get really, really excited because that's the neurological pathways. AI is right. Tesla self-driving car uses all three. AI is the more specific. I look at this data set and I go, here, for me, it's using Copilot and Excel. Hey, look at this data and give me a summary. And it goes, here's these points. Of course, me as a marketer goes, look at all the social media data and give me correlations. And it's going, yeah, the name of all your posts and all the comments can't do that for you. Nope, don't want to do that. So it's interesting, I guess, where I'm getting at, to look at all of these tools and go, yes, part of it still needs to be my job, but how much of my job is just, for lack of a better word, supervising AI and setting up these things that historically used to be, yeah, you get a team of people and you get everybody with their specialties and you'd have processes documented and all this other stuff. And I'm like, man, how much of my day now is just putting things into a model, whether it's Adobe's Firefly, right? And going, hey, I can make my own image model, and then I can make 6,000 ads at the click of a button, and they all look like our brand, and it all has our brand voice. Great. If I'm doing that process, how much of my job is just supervising and making sure it's not hallucinating and not doing the other things? Because to your point, do you feel like you get hours back in your day? I mean, maybe it's also a personality flaw of mine, but I was like, if I have time, I will fill it with something. But also, I don't know that I've ever tracked as a marketer, hey, I used to be able to do 10 blog posts. Now I can do 50. And I guess my big tangent then back to you is going, what would you be looking for from a marketing team? That I know it's kind of a laughing matter that you go, well, I don't know, what's the ROI? And I go, I don't know, Todd, I don't have that data. Like, what kind of data is even worth tracking, and what's essentially a waste of time or less productivity because now I'm spending all this time just tracking stuff that you're going to go, yeah, I don't care about that one bit.
That was a lot.
Yeah.
So there's a couple things I wanted to address on it. I do think the world is changing, especially the skills of the workforce, which is probably not terribly surprising. We are at a very interesting tipping point as to what's going to happen going forward. And I think you nailed it, right? There is probably a lot more, for lack of a better term, at least in my head at the moment, is babysitting of AI. However, there is a lot of other stuff that's coming along too. Is one of the larger things that people are looking at is how do they develop better prompts for AI? And as that starts to continue going down the path, how is that going to change us long term? I'm not entirely sure just yet. I'm not a futurist, so I can't easily picture this as what it looks like exactly. But it does change the way we do business, and it will change how people get hired, what their expectations are, et cetera. The nice piece about it is you get to decide, what does this allow me to do? Does that allow me to hand off some more basic tasks to lesser individuals that are still getting into the workforce, just learning? I didn't mean lesser as an individual. Maybe we got to strike that. But does it give me the ability to get somebody that has no experience in and get them effective immediately? Or does this allow me to take a person like Kelsey, who's very mature in the marketing aspect, and say, I don't need you to worry about the small things anymore. I need you to work on some of the bigger picture stuff, which leads me into the, what is it that I care about from a marketing perspective? And from my point of view, I mean, ultimately you start to ask, why do we do marketing? And the intention of it is, ultimately, it's what helps us do business, and it's designed to get awareness in place and whatnot. So the metrics that are important to me is, while the content is incredibly important and it needs to be good quality content, it's ultimately designed to make you pay attention to what we're doing because we know what we're talking about. So the core metrics there is, when I create it, do I get the response I need from it? So those are the things that I'm looking for from a marketing team and individuals, as is what we're developing appropriate? Is it hitting the right people? That kind of stuff. And can we measure that? How do we know that it's working? So while AI can probably help with some of the analytics of how that's working yet, most of the stuff we talked about up to this point has been more creating content. But I think on the back end, it can help with the analytics piece as well.
Yeah, and to take it out of the marketing context, there's so many tools, right? There's thousands and thousands of AI tools, and I feel like you can go out to Google and go, hey, SalesWise, I want a tool that records something and gives me insights and automatically sends an email. There's probably pages and pages of tools that can do that. And I know you mentioned we've done a bunch of podcasts on, well, how do you make sure that your data is secure? There's compliance laws, right? That's a whole nother rabbit hole that we could go down and go and vet your tools. We essentially talked about that in our CrowdStrike episode too. Vet your tools. But then at the same point of what you just said, I could go hog wild. I could do marketing analytics. I could do content. I could do social. And there's all these different tools. I could do video creation. You can make an AI avatar. But if you don't know why you're doing any of it beyond, hey, I can do these things, which is super exciting and fun. I can make presentations all day long with AI, which would be super exciting and fun, but I'm not customer facing. I don't do demos. I don't do presentations. Why on earth would I do that beyond the fact of it's fun, it's cool, it's fun to play around with it, and maybe I'll find something that's super productive. Probably not, but maybe. But really knowing, okay, I said it to our marketing team. It's the main character energy, which, yes, Gen Z, yes, I've been working on social a little bit too much lately. And I'm like, main character energy. But if I distilled it down to going, who is your main character, which, yes, is in the business world? Who's your persona, right? Who's that? But I like the idea of going, if I was the main character of this journey, while it's great from a CIT perspective to go through and see all of this content, it's AI generated, it's hitting at the correct moment, but do I actually care about any of this? Or was this just one more marketing tool that got something else in front of me? Or is it that the AI tool is doing enough of the entry-level tasks, essentially, then the stuff that I'm working on is something that feels like it was made just for that person? I have 50 articles to choose from, which then means I can pick the one that talks about being a rock star and uses a bunch of 80s analogies, and I can go, hey, Todd, here's this for you. That's, I guess, that's why I get excited about AI is going, yeah, it can do my job, but can it do my job enough that then the things that it can't do, which is knowing the human or the emotional trigger? Because as much as I try to prompt AI to go speak to emotional triggers, and then it goes, are you losing sleep over cybersecurity? And I go, I'm so glad that you read a bunch of copy.
But that's not the point here.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, again, I think you covered a ton of content that's really interesting. I mean, when we were talking earlier about entry level versus a more mature marketing person, I think the tool and the entry level stuff allows you to get into the stuff that you're talking about now, which is a lot more of the what I'd refer to harder thinking kind of stuff. Is how do I know what's going to resonate with people? How do I do that research? How do I connect those dots and then create something that's meaningful? You know, you mentioned potentially that I'm a kid from the 80s. So you're talking about rock bands and hair metal and Camaros. So you knowing your audience allows you to create the content, and then AI can pick up the little pieces that take a lot of time, but still fills in the gaps for you so you can move on to the next thing that does require the human element to it. So there is a ton of value there.
Which I feel like is probably where we're kind of winding down this conversation, because I could keep on tangenting, but essentially it's still the same argument whether you're using image generation, content generation, looking at data analytics for your businesses going. All of that gives you enough of a base or a springboard that then you can do the additional things. Maybe you can have time to do training. You can have time to go to events and actually network with your customers and have that understanding. I can have time to sit on a podcast with you and shoot the breeze about all this stuff and then go, oh, I just had all of these great ideas, or I realized this pain point that I didn't realize, or I have the brain space to understand cybersecurity acronyms because I'm not trying to write an email draft by hand. that would take an equal amount of time. So I guess where I'm getting at with all of this is AI is super exciting. There's so many models. There's so many things you could look at. There's so many tools. There's so many things I could bring to somebody like you to go, I want to spend money on this. Money, please. It's our ongoing joke that I'm the member of the marketing team that's like, I'm going to spend some money. Yes, but then how do you get to that next point of going, okay, your organization's big enough that you have to get this approved by a board? And how do you distill it down so it's not me talking for 50 minutes about how exciting it is, and then you at the end going, that's great. None of that tells me the business impact of any of that tool. It just tells me how cool it is, which is the hard pivot that my brain has had to do when we bring these discussions to you or to Kyle, is to go, yeah, but TLDR, what's that going to do?
Right. Yeah, I think you again covered a lot of good content. The answer for us is it's hard for us too. We've got a podcast. I think we did one last week, which is how much technology is too much technology, and the answer was never, none. You never hit that cat. So being nerds, we love it. So the AI stuff is really exciting for us too. But you still do have to make the business connection, right? Sometimes it costs a lot of money to get some of the tools you want to do the things you want to do. So there is a justification that goes into it. And I think you hit it really early on in this podcast about, can I justify being more content at less cost, or can I justify not hiring an additional body, but we get more automation? Those things mean a lot. And again, it gets into the metrics aspect of it too. So you can look at it a whole bunch of things, but ultimately from my brain is how do I justify it? And this would come for boards too, is there has to be a purpose behind it. And technology being great, it's going to naturally resonate with me, but not with everybody. And there still needs to be a justification. Why are we doing it? What are the outcomes from it? And what do we get for the money spent? And as long as you can put that into context, you most likely will get your project approved. I think I mentioned it earlier too. There are some other things that I would include in that justification process of what does it look like when you bring your project to market? How do you know you're going to address the concerns and the risks that go with it? So it is a little bit broader than just, it's cool, it'll save us money, can we go? It does have to have a few other things in there too, but we covered that already.
Exactly. And you have to have somebody actually, I liked your term of babysitting it, that it's not we'll buy this tool and it'll do everything for us. Maybe in, 6 months or whatever, I'm looking forward to that AI overlords just going, I did all of your stuff for you. And I'm going, okay, cool. Please take it. Take the wheel, you drive. But it's probably not an immediate answer that a marketing team, if you didn't have one in-house, you can't just be like, yeah, here's a tool that does my marketing for me. And I'm going, yes, if you just want the tasks.
Yeah, it's not enough on its own. You would definitely need more to it. You can't just have the tool and you got the golden egg.
Yeah, there we go. There's the TLDR to wrap up this podcast. But if you stayed with us long enough to get through all of the tangents, you could just listen to the last 5 minutes, and that's golden.
Thank you for joining us today. If you enjoyed this podcast, please like and subscribe. If you want to get in touch with anyone on this podcast, please reach out to us at info@cit-net.com or head out to our website, cit-net.com/podcast. And we'll be back next week with an all-new episode.